Hey, welcome to the Publish, Promote, Profit podcast with me, Rob Kosberg. Every week, I interview thought leaders and experts who have used a book to grow their income and their impact. So tune in weekly for these interviews so you can learn how to use your own best-selling book and go from hunting for clients and opportunities to instead being the hunted. All right. Hey, welcome everybody. Rob Kosberg here with another episode of Publish, Promote, Profit, the podcast. I have a friend and somebody that has done some amazing things with their book. You can see right behind Anthony is his book, Catapulting Commissions. Let me tell you a little bit about Anthony, and then we'll dive into the content. Anthony's an international best-selling author. I love that. And an expert in sales training and recruitment whose insights have been featured in Forbes, CNBC, Fox, and CBS. Anthony doesn't just teach sales performance, he lives it. As an 18-year veteran of sales, Anthony's achieved top accolades in direct sales, business-to-business sales, and medical sales. And in his first business at the age of 22, he built a team of over 100 sales reps. Pretty impressive. And then went on to receive top accolades for his leadership in direct sales, B2B, and medical. Currently serves on a leadership team that oversees a $500 million medical sales organization where he's also trained international sales forces and helped facilitate product launches in new markets. Mr. Anthony Garcia of Catapulting Commissions. Thanks for being on with me today, brother.
Rob, I'm excited to be here, man. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share with your audience, and thank you for everything you do with Publish, Promote, Profit.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Well, obviously, we have a little bit of history together, and maybe we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. But, you know, the keys to our show is really all about, we want you to talk about your book. We want you to talk about, you know, the successes that you've done for people in what you do. Maybe ask in the beginning for you to share a little bit about your business and how you help people. But then kind of shift gears, and we want to talk about what your book has done for you. The book is a significant achievement in and of itself. It's a lot of hard work. But after that hard work, we expect there to be some fruit, you know, some impact and income is what I like to talk about. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about that, and we'll ask some specific questions around that as well. So without further ado, maybe tell us a little bit about, you know, besides what we've heard in your bio, you know, tell me about the consulting arm of your business, how you're helping people with that, and who it is that you're training, teaching, and what you do for them.
Yeah. So where I really started this business with Catapulting Commissions, the idea was to create credibility because I wanted to do keynote speaking. I wanted to share my message as a keynote speaker, as, you know, a sales expert, motivator, specifically to a B2B industry where you're trying to climb the ranks of sales echelon. And so when I launched my book in January of 2020, I was like, this is great. And immediately when launching the book, I had booked several speaking gigs, which was fantastic. COVID hits, every speaking gig canceled. And so I sat there and I was like, okay, how do I pivot this? How do I pivot this business? And so I said, okay, one of the things that has always been asked is will you consult my business? And at the time I'm like, no, I want to travel. I want to speak. I want to do this. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm not traveling. I'm going to be home. Let's consult. Yeah. And so it literally, you know, starting the consulting portion wasn't the original plan. It was really just, hey, I want to speak and run a podcast under the same name and have that as my revenue source. Consulting came as a pivot to COVID, but it has been a wonderful pivot because now it really has just been, you know, I have clients all over the world now, which, you know, I couldn't fly to see my client in New Zealand and talk to my client in Denver on the same, like, it's just impossible, but it's now a reality. And so I made the pivot right when COVID went. I said, you know what, I'm going to take everything that I was going to speak about and I'm just going to deliver it for free. And I'm going to continue to share the message for free. And I'm going to send my book to as many directors of sales and sales managers possible and say, look, here's a book. I'd love to share a copy for you, a copy for your team. And if you're interested, I'd love to run a 1-hour webinar and just talk about some of the principles from the book, and I always leave this option, or if there's anything in general sales you'd like for me to address on. And more often than not, I get a response, yeah, that would be great. Because as a sales manager, you're always looking for someone to say, hey, how can you motivate my employees? Well, my focus going to sales managers Same thing. Yeah. Can you help us during COVID? Can you help us during COVID? And the local chamber got word of what I was doing. And it was like, can you help our small businesses? Well, yeah, I can help the small businesses. No, but really, can you spend time with them? Absolutely. So then I started putting on webinar classes for the city of Bakersfield through their Kern Women's Business Center, through the Chamber of Commerce, with 50 or 60 entrepreneurs on these webinars.
Wow.
Running through the psychology of sales and how to improve. And mind you, Rob, all of this was for free or really low fees. It was me outreaching. And in the beginning, I'm like, this is crazy. This is not going to, I'm starting to spend a lot of time here. But at the same time, I was home doing nothing. Now I have a new problem. The new problem is I have paying clients, and I'm starting to develop more paying clients than I can probably take on. And it's been, when that happens, right, supply and demand, my rates and fees, and we're here to talk, publish, promote, and profit. My fees keep going up. And even so much so, somebody today, we made a decision not to work together and said, would you honor my price in 6 months from now? I said, I have to be honest with you, probably not. And it's not that it's just my time is getting limited and the clients that are retaining me. So it's a whole new consulting business that is retaining me. It really is help my business grow, help my business thrive. And one of the things that I share with my clients, and I really attribute it to you, Rob. When people come with me, there's a big misconception between sales and marketing. And I tell everyone who comes, look, I will help you develop a sales process. I'll help you get clear on your sales process. I'll even train your sales team. But if you sit here and ask me to run, create an e-marketing strategy or ads or this whole program, just because I know what I'm looking at, know what I'm doing, doesn't mean I can teach it, doesn't mean I want to do it. And I use the analogy, I'm like, so much so, I don't run the own marketing for any of the businesses that I own. Yeah. And when people look at me, they're like, you're the sales guy. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I'm not the guy that's going to sit here. It's a completely different strategy. So that really has been the pivot in the business.
Totally different departments, sales and marketing.
Oh, 100%. That's, half the clients that I work with, everybody wants to start in the marketing department. And, without saying clients' names, I would say majority of the calls are, I want to increase my sales for my business post-COVID. Great. Who's your audience? Who's your ideal customer? Everyone. Well, everyone doesn't buy.
No, they don't. You said a lot, Anthony. I want to unpack some of it. So you pivoted because you were going to do some public speaking. Your book helped you to get some opportunities for, I guess, some paid and free speaking gigs, which is fantastic. All of those got canceled. So you left thinking, okay, what am I going to do? What's the next step? And so you started speaking online, in essence, right? That's all a webinar is. Mm-hmm. You're doing a speaking engagement, but you're doing it online instead of traveling to that location. You started doing that for multiple businesses. And then these people, I assume, you didn't say where these opportunities are coming from, but my assumption is that some of these business owners heard you speak about sales and said, how can I just hire you? Can you talk a little bit about what that looked like? And was it surprising to you? Was it expected? Let's go into it a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, no worries. You are correct. It's been a lot of outbound. In terms of outbound, my footprint online has grown exponentially since from the day I met you to the day the book launched to now. Yeah. I have 70 different podcast episodes out. I have 64 different weekly blogs. That's all within a span of less than 14, 15 months. So I have put pedal to the metal and putting content out. The day I realized my content was reaching outbound, where it wasn't somebody who I knew, wasn't someone who had referred, I made a post and someone made this horrible comment on Instagram that I was a fraud, the next version of Tony Robbins, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, I laughed. And I remember looking at it and I screenshotted it, and I didn't respond to the person I did it. I screenshot, but I'm going to save it because that was the day my message reached somebody who didn't know me.
Yeah.
That was the day my message got outside my circle of comfort. The very next week, I got a message on Instagram. Didn't recognize the name. Matter of fact, the person didn't even have a picture, but it simply said, I have a company. We're having some trouble generating sales. Would you be open to taking a call with me? Now, I go to this person's Instagram profile, and it is just bare. Like maybe there's 10 followers. It's just, I'm like, this is a scam. There's no way this is legit. So I'm like, you know what? Yeah, no problem. So I send them to one of my screening emails. I'm like, send an email here with your info, and, it's kind of a pre-questionnaire. And if that works out, then somebody on my team will reach out to schedule an appointment with you. It worked out. It was an international client. The contracting bid ended up being my first 5-figure consulting bid. And what was exciting about that, Rob, was it was no paid ads. It was no funnel. It was just constant constant communication. And somebody had reached out, shared what they were looking to do. We got on one Zoom call, and I worked with this client, and we had to find a time zone that worked. So I said, I'll commit to work with you from 5:30 in the morning. And it was my 5:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. client a couple of times a week until we got our project done. And I will tell you this much, Rob, I'm in California, but to take a month project between 5:30 and 8, make the money I made at home, that was the first one, and I was hooked from there.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I talk about something that I call the hierarchy of desire. And of course, what it's really about is, creating a frame in which people see you. And so, at the bottom of this hierarchy, think of it like a pyramid, you have people that are generalists. Maybe one tier up is someone that has a few initials after their name, so they're a specialist. But above that is where the real traction begins. And that's where people start looking at you as an expert or a thought leader or even a celebrity. And the way you rise, of course, up that hierarchy is, number one, you have your own book, because everybody that looks up to someone at the top of their field, they're looking at someone that's a best-selling author. That's number one. But then number two, what you've done amazingly and beautifully with your book and then with your podcast and with your social media content is you've built upon your book with the additional credibility of PR, of media. And media can be your own podcast, which it is in your case. And of course, now appearing on other people's podcasts. Media can be social media. And so that has to, there absolutely positively has to draw people to you. That's all. If you are willing to put in the time and energy to get a book done, make it successful, and then build upon that book with media, you will attract people to you. And that's what you've done. And congratulations. I'm excited to hear that. And I think it's amazing because it's the vision that you had, a couple, 2-3 years ago in putting all of this together. Let me put you on the spot if I could. You have your own business and your own thing that you're doing. But besides that, this new consulting arm and the speaking, the stuff that's come from your book, we're talking about the last 6-8 months or however long. What's the dollar amount on that? What has that brought to you that honestly you weren't expecting?
Yeah, I would say, I'll stay with this. The past 6 months have been the best 6 months because the first 12 months after launch, it was a little bit slower.
Yeah.
But truly within the past 6 months, I've averaged between 10 and 12 grand a month in additional income that I didn't anticipate.
Right. And that's besides your other...
Besides everything else.
Yeah.
It was just, how is this? And I had the conversation with my wife last time, like, this is spinning really fast. And now I have people from, my businesses or my other businesses are like, hey, this thing is really booming. And now they're like, do you ever need someone to work with you? You know what? I just might. Like, I have to be honest with you. You know what? There's a certain point in time where I'm like, okay, how much can I take personally? How much can I expand? So I'm at that point, and I share this, I've shared this on my podcast. I'll share it on yours. 2021 really is a critical point for me as saying, okay, which arm is going to rise to be the strong one? And it's funny. I have some sustainable revenue metrics. I have several different businesses, but this one that came from my book is just, it's like the little engine that could, and it just keeps growing and growing. Yeah. And I say this because I'm going to share this episode with my following and my clients as well. One thing that people, they always hear like, hey, your business is growing. Oh, that's awesome. What you don't hear, and that's why I said the last 6 months have been the best 6 months. What you didn't see was the first year of a weekly blog post, a podcast post. My first podcast must have had, 11 listeners, right? It was if that. And so I just remember I looked at the metrics and I'm like, okay, this is so disappointing. Like, I have a message. People need to hear it, right? I've gained some credibility. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep putting the message out. I'm going to put the reps in. And my goodness, Rob, the doors that have opened, because everybody who now looks up Anthony Garcia says international bestseller. Everyone who looks up the Catapulting Commissions sees it doesn't take long. You Google Catapulting Commissions and the accolades pop up. The bestseller status pops up. Getting endorsed by Selling Power magazine. All of that started from a book. And so now it's my job to leverage that book to continue to build that credibility.
Yeah, I love it. I can't stop smiling. My face is going to start hurting before the episode's over because, this is what it's all about. If I could only convey one thing to authors that are listening or people that want to write a book is that, the book is not the end of the journey. The book is the beginning of the journey. so many people think that, their journey, their work ends with the writing of the book. No, 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 no. The work begins. And obviously all of the fruit and all of the things that you can harvest from it will come, but they might take a little time. Now, you could have, truth be told, you could have expedited things by paying for traffic rather than building it organically. Now, I'm not saying that you did it wrong. I'm saying that what you've done is beautiful and amazing because you did it in a part-time kind of just a few hours a week way, and now have built up a six-figure income in just a few hours a week using your book. And you could sprinkle some paid traffic on that. If you wanted to get the fire burning a little bit hotter and a little bit faster, you could sprinkle a little paid traffic on it and you could get you a bonfire pretty quick. Now, you may not want to do that because you have a lot of plates spinning and a lot of balls in the air, but that is always possible.
You've read my mind. We have gone round robin on that. My wife's my business partner. She has a couple of businesses, and we have gone round robin on that. One of my ventures has some stock options and things that are coming to vest this year. And so now it's like, okay, once that hits, this was kind of always the plan. Like, once this hits, what's next, Anthony? I mean, it'd be silly for you to drop something when something's going to sprinkle, a shot in the arm. Yeah. So we've talked about it, and I've looked and I said, okay, if I go put, you just start playing the numbers. And this is why I'm not a marketing guy. You're like, okay, if I spend this, what's my return on my ad spend? And so I sit here, I'm like, okay, here's the program that we're going to build around this. I'm like, it kind of scares me. I'm like, holy crap, this really does become the thing that leads the race. So we have contemplated it. I'm not saying we're not going to do it, but we're definitely ensuring it's timing right for both myself, my wife, my family, my other business ventures. But the reason I did it organically, and I contemplated doing ads right out the gate, but I wanted to see, this is my own beta test, Rob. I wanted to see, can my message create an audience? Can what I'm sharing deliver, be valuable? I don't ever want to be, I have seen some incredible marketing campaigns with the product at the end. I'm like, man, that just doesn't deliver.
Right.
And so now I'm like, okay, can I be the product at the end that delivers? And so it was like a beta test. Can I build a following? And I did. And so now the marketing campaign comes on and even so much so that my organic show, the guests that I've reached out to or reached out to me that have been on my own podcast show are people that a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was like, hey, I want to be like that person. New York Times bestsellers, 8-figure entrepreneurs. I'm like, holy crap, you're reaching out to be on my show.
Right.
Yes, we're going to get there.
Right. I love that. It's really interesting. I imagine that most people that are listening would love to do it exactly the way that you're doing it. And so I think that this show is going to be very popular with people, and we'll probably throw a lot of traffic at it too, because, the organic method requires two things, and you've already expressed those. It requires work, which you've invested, and it requires patience, because it does take time to begin paying off. And you didn't share this. You're obviously the sales guru. So when you get on the phone with somebody, of course, someone might say, listening to this, well, of course, Anthony's going to close that deal because he's the sales guru. But I have a sneaky suspicion that when people see you're the best-selling author, when people see your media and they hear your message, that it doesn't require any selling whatsoever. Tell me a little bit about what that has looked like. Like this guy that reached out on Instagram and has the international corporation. Are you having to have a real sales conversation with these people, or are they just ready to buy?
It's so funny you said that. I was like, I'm not a script person, and there's people who are script people and not, and I don't get in that debate. I'm personally not a script person. I have my outline of what I want to discuss with someone who's on a discovery call. I'm like, okay, here's what I'm trying to find. Here's what I'm trying to identify. And so like my very first few calls, I was like, okay, here's how I'm going to ask for the business at the end. Yeah. And I never really got to that point. It was almost to the point where people were asking to do business with me. And believe it or not, I'm at the point now where the businesses that have found me through my social media outreach, it really is how much. It's a question of, can you afford me? So my sales call is really, here's the value I provide. And I really get them to identify the biggest problem and make sure that my services, don't cost more than their problem. But it's really, how can I hire you? How can I retain you? Yeah. The selling portion, it's incredibly scary, and not scary now, it's exciting. I just got an RFP, which is a request for a proposal for a large company in LA for a sales consulting gig and a sales training gig. Biggest offering that I put out to date. And
6 figures?
Yes.
Nice.
And I asked at the end, I said, just for my well-being and understanding, who else are you considering in this process? I know how you found me. And the names that they shared, it's almost like this. Eventually, the people you look up to become your competition.
Right.
And when I heard that, I was like, so told my wife, I said, look, you know what? I submitted it, gave my best foot forward. If it lands, great. But if it doesn't, I'm pumped because you know what? I just got into this league of gigs. And I picked up some mentors along the way because, you start submitting these bids, and, they go from small business to medium to large really fast. And the dollars get big really fast. And so it's exciting to see what's taking place.
Yeah, I love that. Obviously sales is a big part of the equation of any business. And if you're listening and you need help with sales in your organization, then you need to contact Anthony, and we'll talk in a few minutes about how best to reach him. But the cool thing, and Anthony's obviously experiencing it maybe in a different way, the cool thing is that, when you position yourself at the top of that hierarchy of desire, you don't even get a chance to have a closing conversation. They're ready to buy, and then it only becomes, am I a good fit? Are they a good fit for me? And is there, an issue with the actual affording of our program and or your consulting, et cetera. And so it's really just a matter of disqualifying than selling at this point. And obviously it's cool that you're experiencing that. You're talking to people that are, we have this phrase where we want our clients to go from hunting for clients to being the hunted. And when you're the hunted and they're coming after you, hey man, you're just lining them up. That's all it is, just lining them up. So congratulations. It's only just begun.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love the analogy, and it couldn't be truer. From the hunter to the hunted, and I've shared that on podcast. I've shared not what you said, but I've shared people, my business has grown without me doing the outbounding. Like I don't come and say, hey, I want to sell you something. My outbounding is, hey, I'd love to send you a free copy of a book. I offer this if you take advantage of it. If not, don't even worry about it. And it's 2 or 3 sentences and it's taking flight.
Love it. Let's switch gears for 1 second. And we talked a lot about what the book did for you and what it's doing and how you're using it and how you're stacking media on it, which is just brilliant. What was the hardest part about writing your book, and how did you overcome whatever that piece was?
I think the most challenging thing was I was trying to make the book perfect. Like it was just this pursuit for perfection, right? And that pursuit for perfection delaying my process. But I was like, I want this book perfect. I want this book perfect. So that was one of the challenging parts of like, I had pursued for perfection so long that by the time that I was, chapter 10 was perfect, chapter 1 didn't look perfect anymore. Right. And it was a vicious cycle that if I can go back to that time period, I'm like, you know what? Here's your 90-day window. This is the time frame, beginning to end, get it done. Because if you go any further, any longer, the concept and the ideas change. And that was probably the most challenging part, was trying to pursue for the perfection. I think the other part was adding personal stories. And I share this, Rob, because I would use analogies in writing my book, and I would spend time. And I remember doing the research to try to find the perfect analogy that would demonstrate the point from my framework in the book. And I found some really good examples, which are great. But you know what? When I speak to people who've read the book, not one person says, hey, I really love that story that you shared that happened to the kicker at the 1989 AFC Championship game. No one shares that. What they share is, hey, man, I really appreciate you sharing your vulnerability of what happened to you when you were a kid in high school. I appreciate you sharing the story of the first time you cracked 7 figures in your business. And those were personal stories, just completely vulnerable. This is what happened. I talk about adversity on how my first experience with failure was in Little League Baseball and how I put so much pressure on it. And my best friend calls me and was like, I'm still mad at you that we lost. And I laughed. I'm like, you read my book. That's what you recalled. And that was the first person. But a year and a half later, everyone who talks to me, those are the stories. So that's the one thing where it was hard in the beginning, was to say, I'm going to put myself out. But it really resonates with my readers. Every reader, people who've known me, who don't know me, the message is the same. I really appreciate your personal stories because I relate.
Love that. Love that. Obviously, there's elements to connecting your personal story to the content and the points you want to make. We talk about that in our hybrid ghostwriting program. And as long as you have a process to follow, and open loops, closed loops, a way to connect those things, then you can take a story about, a failure to reach the championship game or win the championship, and then connect that directly to whatever points they are that you're trying to make. And so then it becomes both in your voice, and it attracts affection towards you, but it also teaches and helps that person that is thinking of hiring you to say, oh, this dude knows what he's talking about. He's getting this point across, and I'm not doing these 3 things or however many things. So I love that. Now, you had mentioned to me also, maybe you could talk about this for one more moment, and then we'll come back around and talk about where people can find you. But you've talked to me about how you really were looking to go general initially. You wanted to write a self-help book. You wanted to write something that maybe could be attractive to tons of people. You didn't go in that direction. That is a very kind of typical thing. I wonder if you can talk about that for just a moment and, share about overcoming that, and also, what obviously it's led to some amazing things. So just talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I came to you with the idea. I wanted to write a general, overall, motivating, sales, inspirational book. And the idea behind it was like, okay, I want to write a book that appeals to the masses, like what I said at the beginning. I want to sell my book to everyone. Yeah. And I remember having the conversation with you in depth. Like, you have to get granular. You have to truly go into your niche. And so I'm like, okay. And I remember that conversation. And so then I did some research, and I was like, okay, well, who exactly am I really trying to make this message for? Like, how specific can I get? So the book is written for sales professionals trying to achieve their next sales goal. And in the book, I outline your next sales goal should be something large and scary. And if we go even further, it really goes to B2B. But that was who I focused with. That was my message. Now, because I made that message so clear and precise to that group of people, it has appealed to people lateral from that.
Yeah.
Sales leadership, entrepreneurs. I've had someone who sales managers. Yeah. I've had someone who's reached out to me and say, hey, your methodology for achieving a sales goal works great for someone trying to diet. I'm like, dude, I'm not a professional dieter, and I'm not the most physically fit person, but I appreciate that. And here's what I learned from that, Rob. These names you see that speak to the masses, that are like, oh, you're so influential, you speak about everything, right? I can't help, you watch Gary Vaynerchuk, some love him, some hate him. Right now he has a underrated segment on social media that has 1 million views every week. And I mean, it is everything from comic books and TV shows. Right. But what people don't realize is 10 years ago, 11 years ago, Gary V was so focused with Wine Library on YouTube. That was it.
That's it.
That was all he did.
Every day an episode of Wine Library TV. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So to gain that credibility to speak about everything, it happens. It happens naturally. And I've learned that on my last major webinar event, about 47 business owners on, and we were doing great. And I stood for Q&A at the end. And the questions that were coming were those life questions. Well, how do I get motivated in this position? And it really was, I've never said I'm the motivation expert. I never said I am this person. I'm the sales guy. I'm gonna help you achieve this goal. But because I had such a clear vision, I gained that person's trust to then be the expert for everything else. Yeah. And that was my big takeaway from learning how to just get a clear message for one person, and everyone else falls in place.
I love that. If you're listening and you're contemplating what type of book to write, and it's your first book, then always go narrow. I like to tell my clients, I have a client that wants to write a poetry book, and they also want to write a book about their expertise and profession. And I say, look, start with your expertise in your profession, because you're going to make money from that. And then you can take that money and you can put it into your passion, whether that's writing a poetry book or children's books or whatever. And I think in your case, you've obviously done that. You've created a 6-figure business just part-time by sharing content and by sharing your wealth of information and knowledge and using your book as the platform for that. So obviously, if you're listening and you need help in sales and you want to catapult your commissions, then you need to go to Mr. Anthony Garcia, because he'll help you to do that. So brother, thank you. Tell us where can people find you? Where's the best place maybe to get your book or learn more about you? Give us some details on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website's the best method. It's Anthony P. Garcia. Anthony Paul Garcia is my full name. So it's anthonypgarcia.com. Gives you the link to everything. If you want to just get straight to the book, you can go to catapultingcommissions.com, and that'll get you directly to the book link. And if you want to download the e-copy of the book, Rob, can I share that link for your audience to download the e-copy of the book?
Absolutely.
So I have gone various different funnels and different things, and I've come to the point where I give a copy of the ebook for free. You download the ebook, just text the word hello, literally hello, to 661-228-8967. And by texting hello to that number, 661-228-8967, you automatically get a link to download the book. It's a free ebook. You also get a link, in full disclosure, you'll get a link to get a physical copy of the book, pay a little bit for shipping, the book ships out to you. But the reason I do that is I want you to get the content in your hand. I have gone on this mission the past 12 months, 14 months or so, just to give everything for free. And the back end, I've had the biggest, most successful revenue months. So I'm just continuing that. Love to share that with your audience.
That is the right way to do it. And congratulations. Obviously, you're a friend and a client. And so we're going to talk more in the future as you do take additional steps and do additional things. But thank you. Thanks, brother, for taking your time and being with us. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. It's really, I think it was really, really good for people to hear this, because the organic stuff and what you've done creating this six-figure business as just a little side hustle where just spending a few hours a week is amazing. So thank you. And thanks for being on Publish, Promote, Profit.
Thanks for having me, Rob.